Okay, let us begin with the invocation. Toward the One, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of Guidance. Amen. I sent out a paper yesterday. I don't know if you had a chance to read it. I'm going to read parts of it, not the whole piece, but it's there for you to read, and it'll be placed on the website as well. It's from the Inayat called The Phenomena of the Soul. In the beginning, when there was no earth nor heaven, there was no other phase of existence than eternal consciousness, which in other words might be called a silent, inactive state of life, or an unawakened intelligence that man has idealized as God, the only being. In the first stage of manifestation, the unconscious state of existence turns into ilm, consciousness. Every soul is a ray of the consciousness. The nature of the consciousness is that it is radiant. It sends out rays. These pass through all the planes until they reach the ideal manifestation in man. In the Vedanta, the soul is called by three names, which denote its three aspects: Atma, Mahatma, Paramatma. Atma is the soul conscious of the life on the surface. Mahatma is the soul conscious as well of the life within. Paramatma is the consciousness that is the soul of souls, conscious of the absolute within and without, the God of the knower, the Lord of the seer. What I want to say as a comment about what's been read so far is that each person comes to earth with a heavenly predisposition. And that predisposition creates a unique mode of consciousness and a unique mode of knowing. Each of you has a sense of knowing sort of generally what everybody else appears to know, but you know it in your own personal way. The whole manifestation is constituted of two aspects of the consciousness: power and intelligence, in poetic terms, love and light. My comment on that is love and light are the traditional two rails of Sufism. It is love, ishq, that brought us into being. Ishq is the inverse of nostalgia, which is a longing for something that once was. Ishq is a longing for that which is intended to be, and it's particularly a longing of the soul to find itself in its fulfillment. It is love, ishq, that brought us into being. As in the Hadith Qudsi, I was a hidden treasure and love to be known. And as Inayat Khan said earlier in this, God knows through our knowing, in the knowing of all existent things. It is the combination of that love, ishq, and light, marifa, that brings us ever more fully into an awakened state. Marifa is when the light of God descends or emerges within your heart. And you see things, it's like a aha experience or an awakening experience or unveiling experience, however you want to look at it. You see things in a completely new light. Consciousness has taken 4 distinct steps in manifestation, which in Sufi terms are called ilm, ishq, uzud, shuhud. Ilm is the stage. Ilm is the stage in which consciousness acts as intelligence. Ishq is the stage when the activity of the rays of consciousness have increased. The third step of consciousness, wujud, is the creation of vehicles such as the mind and body through which it experiences life on the surface. And the fourth step is its conscious experience of life from the depth to the utmost height, which is called shuhud. This fulfills the purpose of all manifestation. So we can look at ishq, love, as attraction. And this starts at the very most elemental levels, like the attraction of hydrogen to oxygen creates water. And that's the first, one of the first manifestations that creates the possibility of life here on Earth. The ancient Greeks knew, this is me speaking, of course, that the interplay of light and dark creates depth perception. Naikan says the divisions of one into many are caused by light and shade. And if we look keenly into life, both within and without, we should realize clearly that it's one life, one light, which appears divided and made into many different shades. I'm going to do 3 practices that will speak to these words. The first practice is La ilaha illa il ishq. And Dalio put this in the chat so you can see for yourself how it's spelled. The apostrophe L after illa is because in Arabic, when a word ends with a, you don't start the next word with a, you put an apostrophe. So it is really al, the ishq that you're looking at. La ilaha illa il ishq. There are not many gods. There's only love. This particular zikr is the zikr of a man called Fakhruddin Iraqi. And the reason I chose it for tonight's lesson, and I think we've had it in other lessons too, one thing is it just is a favorite zikr I had, but I like to do it. But the second thing is that Fakhruddin Iraqi was a peer in the Shawardi order. And as he traveled, he came into Konya in Turkey at a time when 2 great beings lived in Konya. And Konya was a small town at the time. One being was called Jalaluddin Rumi, and the other being was called Sadruddin al-Kanawi. Jalaluddin Rumi is like an archetype of divine love when you read his poetry. Sadruddin al-Kanawi was Ibn al-Arabi's spiritual successor, and he was also a fountain of love, but he also was a very deep intellect. And Fakhruddin went to him and took, even though he was a peer in his own right, he took bayat with him and studied the Fusus al-Hakam, Ibn Arabi's book with him. And then of these 2 great strands of love and light, he created this particular zikr. the head motion is the same as any of the zikrs that we normally do, starting with the left shoulder. La ilaha, up above the crown, and then coming down into the solar plexus, illah. And then midway between the solar plexus and the heart, il. And then in the heart, ish. But first, it might be a good idea for us just to watch our breath for a moment. When we bring our presence to our breath, particularly the breath that's coming in and out of the nostrils, we can feel that breath coming in and out of the nostrils, and that's a felt sense. And as we stay present to that felt sense of the breath, we can begin to feel felt shifts within the breath. It begins to change as it responds to the radiance of your presence. It might become finer than it was before you started looking at it. It might become lighter in terms of both weight and radiance. And it might become vibrant. You can experience vibrations within it. These are all felt shifts. As it jettisons any of the heavy impressions of the day, you don't have to make it jettison. You just stay present to your breath, and it naturally just lets go of all these impressions. And when it does, it changes. And I think of this as an ablution getting prepared for practice. And the next thing you might want to do is cast that radiant breath upon Latifa Surya, upon the subtle heart, massaging it with the breath and the in breath and the out breath. And you begin to, I've said this before, I know, the ancient ones liken this to blowing on the ember of the heart. And this is in all the great spiritual traditions. And when you blow on it, caressing it with the breath and the in breath and the out breath, the area of your heart begins to warm up a little. And this warmth is radiant discharge. It's a letting go of impressions that are on the surface of the heart. And once you feel that warmth and the out breath, you can release more fully. In breath, penetrate more deeply. And you begin to be aware of softness, that the heart is becoming softer. And this is a subjective experience of space developing in the heart. that space. At first, it's like the chest cavity is larger than usual, but the space unfurls in all directions, goes beyond the skin, traverses the physical body, but it's not of it. It traverses time and space, but it's not of that either. It's just a vast, boundless, luminous space of the heart. This is where we'll place the divine sounds, the divine names, the zikrs that we'll be doing. In this first zikr, Ishq is another great Sufi, Ahmad Ghazali, said Ishq is movement. It's movement toward manifestation that Inayat Khan was talking about, consciousness moving toward manifestation, consciousness moving after manifestation into unfoldment, into fulfillment through you. And you have a unique knowing. The divine sees something through you that it would not see any other way. And this comes through your awakening and through your fulfillment of being. So now we'll say this zikr with that understanding. Each of you can say it as in your own rhythm. La ilaha illa il ish. La ilaha il ish. La ilaha il ish. Now in zikr, the old Sufis talked about dak, tasting God. So they would say you would articulate the zikr and then pause and taste. And what they mean by that is be present to what's present in your heart after you recite. And Ibn Arabi said it's like eating an apple. Every bite has a different taste, even though it's the same apple. La ilaha il ish. Taste. La ilaha il ish. La ilaha il ish. La ilaha il ish. La ilaha il il ish. La ilaha 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 il ish. Last time. La ilaha il ish. Now you pause, and the Sufis use the word sharp, drink the divine, which means allow that which is present in your heart to permeate throughout your being. Now I'd like to go to a practice that alludes to what
Pardon,
Icon was talking about,
pardon
where,
me, Himayat.
yeah,
Before you continue, there is a question in the chat that I think
oh,
came from the original when you were talking about Rumi and a teacher, and the question is, what is the name of the teacher? I think that's what you're talking about, Ananda, correct?
the teacher's Inayat Khan. Oh, which teacher are you talking about? Oh, Sadruddin Al-Kanawi.
Thank you. I think that's what is
Yeah,
being asked.
we'll have time for questions and when I'm done with the practices.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll go back over Sadruddin and then. Inayat Khan said that the divisions of one into many are caused by light and shade. And this goes back to a verse in the Quran. And God's is the place of shining forth and the place of darkening. So wherever you all turn around, then there is the face of God. So the first question is, what is a face? And there's the countenance, but it's what's expressed through the countenance that is truly the face. It's the information that flows, animates, and flows through that countenance. if you go to a friend's or loved one's funeral, look at their body, you can say, well, they're not there because that which was flowing through their face is not there. And that is the face. When they mean the face of God, it's the information that flows. And in this case, whether it's dark or light, something is flowing, something is speaking to you. And to the Sufi, then, they're living in an iconic world. Everywhere they turn is this communication from the depth. The phrase which is in the chat will be Ya Anta Al Hadi Asatar Al Fatah. That's a lot, but let me just say it. Ya Anta means O thou, Ya Anta. Al Hadi, you know that it's who guides us. Asatar, through veiling. Al Fatah, an unveiling or awakening. O thou who guides us through veiling and unveiling. This goes back again to what Inayat was talking about. The divisions of one into many are caused by light and shade. This is interplay. And the ancient Greeks knew that this interplay between darkness and light caused depth perception. Ya anta ahadi asatar afata. Ya anta ahadi asatar afata. Ya anta ahadi asatar afata. Be present to what's in your heart. Al anta. Ya anta al hadi asatar avata. 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 Last time. Ya anta al hadi Asata, Yavata. Drink. Allow that which is present to permeate your being. Amen. Now going back to the very first sentence, that Inayat gave in this lesson. In the beginning, when there was no earth nor heaven, there was no other phase of existence than the eternal consciousness, which in other words may be called a silent, inactive state of life or unawakened intelligence that man has idealized as God, the only being. The last practice that we'll do today is Allahu Akbar. God is ever greater. So, whatever your realization of God might be, know that God is ever greater. And when you're saying this particular saying, you can allow it to draw you into ever greater depths of reality. This is what he was talking about of the absolute. The absolute is beyond anything you could ever conceive. This is this consciousness. And as you're drawn into it and you awaken to other depths of what you're calling God, God is awakening through you to those depths as well. So in this space, boundless space of the heart. And what I want to say about the boundless space before I forget, in the Quran, God says that my heavens and my earth are not large enough to contain me, but the heart of the one who believes in me is. So it's in that boundless space that the divinity lives. And the capacity of that boundless space is beyond the heavens and the earth. This is where we place this sound. Allahu Akbar. Allow yourself to be drawn into ever larger realms of understanding. Allahu Akbar. 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 Last time. Allahu Akbar. Amen. So this is a time where we have Sobet. You have a comment or a question. Sadruddin al-Kanawi. Kanawi means of al-Kanawi means of Konya. It's Sadruddin al-Kanawi. Was Ibn Arabi's stepson and his teacher. I mean, his spiritual successor, excuse me. The man that did the zikr was Fakhruddin Iraqi. Fakhruddin Iraqi studied with Sadruddin. Also was a friend of Rumi's. And would go one evening and listen to Rumi's poetry or participate with him in his shamanistic dances. And then another day he would go and study the Fusus al-Hakam with Sadruddin. He wrote a book called Flashes, and then he created this zikr. And the one thing that I forgot to say is that Fakhruddin Iraqi's teacher was a student of a man named Ahmad Ghazali. Ahmad Ghazali was the younger brother of Amit al-Ghazali, who's famous. Most people probably have heard of him, but he's more of the younger brother who was a great teacher of esotericism. And he wrote a book on love, that God is love. And he said one of the sentences in that book was, motion is love. And in there he was talking about ishq. So Fakhruddin Iraqi brought that strand of love into the discussion through him, through his teacher, and also through Rumi and Ibn Arabi. But then he also brought in the realm of ilm and marifa through studying the Fusus. He placed all of that within that particular zikr that we did first. What we can gain from this particular lesson from Inayat Khan, and it'll be posted at the website so you can read it. But I will also send it to you anyway yesterday. Is that we're participating in something amazing. We're participating in divine awakening. He used the phrase that which we have idealized as God. It's an amazing phrase. Sometimes the Sufis just call it haq, the real. You see, instead of saying Allah, they'll say al-haq, that which is truly real. And I kind of started off the lesson by saying that which we idealize as God was in a silent, unconscious state. And then that state evolved into awakening into consciousness. And then it wished to know more of its nature. So it created creation. And his book, Soul Whence and Whither, Inayat Khan talks about how each ray that is sent forth from that consciousness traverses through all the heavens and stays in each heaven for a time and is attracted to certain beings in that heaven and then moves on to the next. And when I first read that, which I thought was a great story, I thought, well, okay, but why? Why did I stay in a certain heaven for a time? Why was I attracted to certain beings and not others? Why did I decide to move on to the next? Why did I decide to get here? And what I realized was ishq. Ishq is like the GPS of the soul. And it moves forward toward beauty. Beauty is what allures it to the next step. So even when we were doing Allahu Akbar, I said, allow that idea of God, that which we idealize as God, is bigger than anything we can conceive. But allow that to draw you forward, to draw you into itself. There's something beautiful about that to the soul. Something larger, splendid. And the soul is attracted. And somehow it finds itself being nourished. And that's what I mean by beauty. Another way of looking at beauty is when we meditate deeply, and we're done with our meditation and we about to open our eyes, you might sense a subtle reluctance. And that's perhaps because you sense that the outer objects of the world will draw you out of the inner experience. And that shows you that the inner experience is beautiful to you. So that's another way of understanding beauty. But it reaches a point, and that's what Inayat called shuhud, where the spiritual wayfarer can go through, be awake to the heights and the depths of consciousness, can be aware of the vertical and the horizontal, can be aware of the inner and the outer with eyes open, and doesn't feel that reluctance anymore because it sees reality shining through everything. And that's where that other zikr that we did comes in. Ya Antab, O thou, Al-Hadi, who guides Asatar through the veils, Al-Fatah, through the openings, the unveilings. Ah, Sarah, I missed you the last time. Here you are.
Thank you. I have a hard time understanding a lot of this intellectually, although I can feel like of the zikrs we did, and that's probably more important to feel it. But can think of some questions because I think a lot about the witness and also the spirit of guidance. And I wonder, is the witness perhaps the same thing as Mahatma or Shuhud? Is that
Shuhud is witness, yes.
Oh, thank you. And so is the spirit of guidance also a aspect level of the soul or something entirely different?
It is an aspect of the soul, but it's also the light that is given to us both through our lineage. So we have this transmission through the silsila, the baraka of the silsila, guides us, awakens us, calls us. And then there's the light of the divinity itself. So if we do practice, we can look at practice as a preparation. We're allowing ourselves to be prepared. That's like by God. And that's where Rumi talks about allow yourself to be like clay in the hands of the potter that he may shape you. Well, the shaping is the awakening and the fulfillment that comes from that. So the guidance is multidimensional, but ultimately it is the divinity itself, the spirit of guidance.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
And as far as understanding the words, well, first off, they're not in front of you, so it's harder to understand a lot of words when someone's just reading them. But I've given them to you to read. But when you do a zikr, um, like the one where we're saying that God guides us through darkness and light, well, we're being prepared to actually experience that as true. We don't necessarily experience it while we're doing the zikr, but in everyday life, all of a sudden we become aware of the truth of it. And the zikr helps prepare us for that awareness. So practice isn't just 15 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it is, but it's throughout the day and the night. There is a hadith, Kuzi, where, no, it's not a Kuzi, just a hadith. The Prophet Muhammad said, each night and day, God casts 360 glances into your heart. So even though who's aware of it and who's counting, I don't know. But what it is, the feeling, what I get out of that is that God is constantly trying to reach us and guide us with this spirit of guidance. And we may or may not know it. Oh, Toronto.
So, I don't remember which practice, but when the first or second, like, it might have been the first. Well, like, I felt like I was being physically prepared, but on a energetic, the energetic form of the physical, like a blueprint or whatever. And then I gave up my volition basically and was taken on I think of 2001, A Space Odyssey, when, like, I don't know if you remember, but like you go through all these, I mean, I would say veils and light and, like a wild ride, but I was just the witness. Not that, I mean, I was experiencing it, but I wasn't doing it. It was being done. And I mean, it felt very much like what you're describing, like the heavens and the earth cannot contain me, you know. I was like in that, like I was being shown that.
Thank you.
Wow.
Karima, you have to unmute yourself, Karima.
I don't think I got this quite right, but to understand Shahud more clearly, I believe you said something like each person comes to Earth with a predestination, a way of knowing.
A predisposition.
Predisposition, thank you. And then you were talking about the inner knowing and the outer knowing at the same time in this state. And I'm wondering if that state fulfills the purpose of a particular manifestation, an individual's particular manifestation, or pretty much, how do we know if that purpose is fulfilled?
Well, a couple of things. First, if we look at everybody in the gallery, I always like to look at gallery, even though I get pinned. I don't like looking at myself. But if you look at everybody in the gallery, you can see that everybody is a unique creature. No two people are the same. And if there's 33 people here and we do a practice of some practice, if everyone took notes, or even if I say something and everyone takes notes of what he says, and then we look at everybody's notes, it'll be quite different. There'd be like 33 different classes going on. And that shows that each of us has a certain way of knowing, a vantage point, a way of understanding. And so that shows very clearly that we all have a predisposition. Now, besides a predisposition, which we're born with, we have life experience, and for good or for bad, for light or for dark, we have life experience. And to some extent, our life experience also illuminates us. It can also darken us, but it can illuminate us too. And then we have what's called awakening. So each of us has our own way of awakening. When I'm teaching, I'm just teaching what I know. It may or may not make any sense to anybody here. I hope it does, but I don't know that. No. And I don't even know what people make of it, if it does even make sense. Each one's it's going to make sense in a different way to each person. So, yeah, we're all on our own unique path, even though we share a path. We're all on the members of the Inayati, and no matter what organization we represent, we're all followers of Inayat Khan. So, when we awaken, what we're looking for is a feeling of fulfillment. We feel fulfilled. We experience fulfillment. And that's all we're expected to, our personal fulfillment has been determined by the divinity by giving us a predisposition. If you think about that very clearly, you can see, well, if you only have a certain way of knowing, your fulfillment is through that way. And if it's a unique way of knowing, then it's a unique fulfillment. So it's in your own heart that you experience, I feel this fulfillment. And when we do practices, sometimes, for a moment, we have some experience of that. We think, well, this feels very full. This really feels very nourishing of my soul, my heart, and my mind. So we can have a sense or a notion of fulfillment. It's not something that someone gives you a certificate and says you're fulfilled. But each of us is in this incredible adventure of awakening divine consciousness. We're awakening to divine consciousness, and in the process, we're allowing divine consciousness to awaken to itself. According to Inayat Khan and all the great Sufis.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So does this, I'll make a covenant with each of you. If you don't ask anything and you don't say anything, that means you understand. So we can just leave it at that.
Well, I'm off the hook.
Yeah, you're off the hook, right? So well, if you consider what's been said tonight, it's kind of mind-blowing. even that sentence by Inayat Khan where he says that which we idealize as God. It's just a framework. It's not really it. It's simply a way of understanding something about it. Hadi. Hadi? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you cut in and out, but yes, I can hear you. I think you're talking to me because see, I didn't hear Hadi, I heard D, and then I heard, can you hear me? For some reason, you cut in and out. I don't know if it's at your end or mine. But that being said, the reason I raised my hand, I don't have a question, but I do want to say thank you for your guidance for the last 10 years. It's hard to believe you've been guiding me for 10 years. And I look forward to the next class. I also look forward to the publication of your book. So, alhamdulillah.
Well, just to be as clear as I can be, there's an echo. This is the last Thursday night class for a time. I've reached the stage in life where I feel like it's an amazing thing if I accomplish 3 things in a day. And I just got I've been playing around with this concept of a book for a long time. Actually, about 6 years ago, Pirzia said I should write it, but I didn't. And it just struck me I was just in Germany for a week, and it just struck me in the midst of being with them that, okay, now's the time to go ahead and write it. So it's going to take me some energy to do that. So we'll see how it goes. I do have the title already, which is Keys to the Divine Treasury.
Can you say more?
Well, yeah, I can say more. Since 2015, I've been leading online classes of the ancient Sufis. And because I said, well, Inayat Khan didn't just emerge out of nowhere. He emerged out of a culture of sorts, and he emerged out of Sufism. So I wanted to know more. Plus, my experiences with Pir Vilayat, he was always quoting the ancient Sufis. He particularly liked Bastami and Nafari and people that he could really get excited about, Ibn Arabi. But it excited me when I listened to him. So I would start reading the books that he alluded to. Anyway, I see that just like each of us is on a journey that brings through a unique mode of consciousness and awakens something deep, each of the ancient Sufi masters did the same.
Mm-hmm.
Each in their own way brought through something. And I can experience, well, I have experienced how each of them, when you enter into reading their works, eventually, and contemplating it, eventually, so you're studying under them.
Yeah.
And you see how what they have to offer deepens spiritual practice. Each one brings through something unique. And you can even see over the 1500 years or whatever it is, how Sufism has evolved and offers us so much in the process as even we evolve. So my hope is to bring that through somehow in a way that makes sense to people and helps them in their practice. Just even the simple concepts like I've shared with Doc and Sharp, tasting and drinking, which the ancient Sufis talked about all the time. Ibn Arabi said that is our specific way of knowing, is tasting. It's our fellowship knows through tasting. So these are things that I was never taught before I started studying with these creatures. And I think you can see to some extent, maybe you have seen, how it helps. Not just reciting something over and over, but reciting and then tasting. And then allowing it to permeate your being. You know, St. John of the Cross in the dark night of the soul said he reached a time where all he could say life was arid, dry. And what I realized when I read that was, yeah, life can have a drying impact upon us. All we have to do is look at our skin. So what rehydrates the soul is the spirit, which is I saw that all of a sudden. It gives us a nurturance. It's like being rehydrated. Every cell of the being in your heart and your mind and your soul feels refreshed. So there's things like that that make a lot of sense if you understand it. It allows us to have recourse to something rather than just being bombarded by a lot of heavy impressions all the time. Basira, yeah, Mendalian.
I just had a comment that the tasting and the drinking to me have been such a wonderful part of practice, as opposed to when I first came into Sufism, especially, seemed like an emphasis on really fast repetitions and 36, do 101, oh, do 1,000. To do it more deeply and slowly, it seems much more meaningful. So I appreciate you bringing that to us.
Well, yeah, and both have their way, both have something to offer, particularly in a group. It's hard for me to lead a group with tasting and drinking because you wonder, well, where's Himayat now? When's he going to say something? What's happening? Is he having a stroke? You know, so because off I go. I mean, even in the zikr, the la ilaha above the crown, one can get lost, enter into. I always say, I quote Junaid of Baghdad. Tawhid is where all traces disappear. You allow consciousness to lift you into that place, that incredible place where there's nothingness and everythingness. It's all unity. And then you descend into the solar plexus, which is what holds your form. And it brings in a whole new realm of existence into the solar plexus. The form is informed accordingly. But I can get, so it's difficult to, I think, lead that. But in a group, just saying it over and over, a group gets the rhythm, and there is a great power in that too.
Well, I
Yeah.
have been touched by the time you take in leading these sessions to taste and to drink. And at first it was surprising to me how much time we spent doing that. So it was eating. It took me a while to get used to it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. He really meant that,
Yeah, I did. I really meant it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. We're taught one thing for 50 years, and then this guy comes along and slips in something else that no one's ever heard of before. Okay, Dahlia.
Well, Basira, you took the words right out of my mouth, actually. It really exactly what I wanted to say, but I'll say it in my own words that the there's something about the way in which you have taught this class, Himayat, that was like, oh, it gave me permission really to slow down and to not be so focused on number of repetitions or getting the words right, but to actually breathe it and taste it and eat it. The permission of that was really, really valuable to me. And glad to hear Basira say, glad I think we have all appreciated that. Well, I won't speak for anybody else. It
Good idea.
really has meant a lot to me because I've had problems with like focusing too much on repetition starts to feel like rote or empty repetition, which I know is not the point. So thank you for that permission really to slow down. And you have been really wonderful about saying to all of us every time, do it in your own rhythm. Like, good. And on Zoom, it's actually kind of impossible to do it in your rhythm. So anyway, I found that I didn't have a choice but to do it in my own rhythm,
Of
which is,
course.
yeah. So,
And when you're on your own, yeah, allow yourself to be carried.
and I have much more. Like I said, I feel very grateful for the permission to do the practices in that way. Um, yeah.
Well, I want to read something from a very great Sufi named Abul Qadir Jilani. There isn't just about tasting, but it's really important to hear, I think. He said are different levels of remembrance, and each has a different way. Some are expressed outwardly, so that's what we're talking about repetition, with audible voice. Some are felt inwardly, silently from the center of the heart. That's why I'm saying place the sound in the center of the heart. At the beginning, one should declare in words what one remembers. So he's saying in the beginning, we articulate. Then, stage by stage, the remembrance spreads throughout one's being. And that's where I talk about drinking and allowing it to permeate. Descending to the heart. So now he's talking about no longer saying it, but this has to take presence and silence. Rising to the soul. And still further, it reaches the realm of the secrets, further to the hidden, to the most hidden of the hidden. How far the remembrance penetrates, the level it reaches, depends solely on the extent to which Allah in His bounty has guided one. So I can't say that we're going to go to the secret of the secrets, but what the point is that there are levels, and we can allow those levels or we can ignore them. But to allow them takes both silence and presence. That's why I quoted Ibn al-Arabi, where he said, each bite of the apple has a different taste, even though it's the same one.
I love that. I loved, oops. I love that you read that quote because just before we came on the Zoom, I had just eaten an apple, slice by slice, and I actually noticed that as I was eating the apple. It's like, wow, each slice of this apple tastes different. So it was wonderful for me that you quoted that in particular.
Well, it's almost precognition on your part. So,
Or yours.
okay. Well, let us end with the supplication that Inayat Khan gave us. Pour upon us thy love and thy light 7 times. Pour upon us thy love and thy light. 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 So I don't know, each of us lives in a different time zone. Whatever's left of your time zone for today, may it be blessed and may you have a blessed sleep. Thank you for participating in this class.